You know, on this channel, I do a lot of harping on about the desperate need for innovation and risk-taking in VR software design. Because otherwise, I think we are not going to see its potential realized. Well, in Ghosts of Tabor, VR gaming may very well finally have its first true title that seeks to innovate and capitalize on the medium in as many ways as it can, and not with just a few token gimmicks like most other VR titles. And now, with its recent release into early access, we're going to have a look and see at what the game presently is and offers, what it could be down the road, and decide whether it really is the game VR needs and we users deserve. I'm Mr. VR Voice. I am passionate about the many potentials of virtual reality, and it is my objective here to provide direct, honest, consumer-friendly content, free from the nauseating cycles of deceitful hype and vapid corporate non-speak that seems to have infected our media of late. My goal is to tell you exactly how I perceive things to be. No more, no less. If you like the sound of that, then come and join me for a moment as we take a look at Ghosts of Tabor. Tabor is a player versus environment versus player modern military survival extraction shooter. I've always believed this genre would be a great fit for virtual reality, as the attention to detail in design and the unpredictable human drama can lend themselves beautifully to the freedom of input we have in VR. And apparently, these developers agree. Tabor is heavily inspired by Escape from Tarkov and essentially takes the entire structure of that game and puts it into its own original VR context. My following statements, and thus this video, will eventually become out of date, as all things do and must. But in this present moment in VR's life cycle, what we're getting in the entire package of Tabor's many systems are interaction mechanics designed with intent to be as naturally intuitive and downright revolutionary as far as input and interactivity for gaming is concerned. And believe me as I say, when all of these things come together and play out as they should, combined with all of this going on alongside other players in real time, why, you have never, ever experienced depth like this from your interactive media in one whole package ever before. So let's have a look at what I'm talking about, shall we? Now, it isn't feasible for me to highlight and mention all of the systems, there are far too many of them, so I'll highlight the most obviously impactful. And for me, the biggest one by far, which interconnects with everything else, is the free-form dynamic interactions between items in the world and other players. It seems that near every interactable exists as its own entity, which isn't limited or tied to another player in some way, despite their owning it, bar a few exceptions, which may or may not change in the future. Hold your storage item open, such as your backpack, and another player may take what they want. The items have physical presence and collide with one another as you'd expect. This, of course, has natural implications for other areas of gameplay when you let your imagination take hold. If you can solid snake your way around unnoticed, for example, then it is very possible to steal from other players' backpacks, remove ammunition from their pouches, or steal their guns outright if they are holstered. Although, to be fair, you can remove weapons and their ammo from players' holsters in other VR shooters too, but you'd be less likely to consider that, nor is there really any need to in other shooters without a robust free-form item system at the core of it all to encourage you to engage in this behavior. This even extends to how you can customize pouches on your combat armor, being able to mostly freely place them where you please. Then place and remove what's contained in them as you please. And no, you don't have to be wearing that armor to enable this functionality as you typically expect from any other game. It doesn't matter where those items are. Another person can be wearing it, or perhaps it's just laying somewhere in the world. It doesn't matter. You have the freedom now to interact with the same natural, intuitive behavior almost as if it were reality. Slowly but surely, as devs catch on, we are seeing VR design shed those restricting abstractions and limitation we have become accustomed to making compromises for. The ability to do this may not seem like a big deal to hear about or perhaps even to see, particularly on a flat screen. But when it clicks with you, when you realize these things are the tiny massive details underpinning the foundation of many exciting gameplay prospects which would unshackle us from the chains we didn't realize were holding us down all this time, then you might understand why the prospect of all of this is so very, very big for VR and gaming and interaction in general. Such a thought process like this, you see, is a domino effect which leads the way into other immersive design choices only VR can justify. Like how, when we consider the act of purchasing things from a marketplace, our newfound freedom has it naturally make sense to go to the marketplace, physically inspect and scan items prior to purchase, making even more sense if item condition and quality are implemented so that we would need to scrutinize and appraise by physically checking it prior to purchase. Continuing along this line of thought more, it then makes sense that we should be able to trial, modify that weapon as we see fit, and then scan to purchase the entire thing as a whole, exactly how you'd expect it to work. One thing leads to another. Ammo crafting requires the simple task of pouring gunpowder and brass into a machine before creation. Still a somewhat crude and abstractive process admittedly, but it's a good start, and one which I hope can be expanded upon into more detail, which could perhaps affect the quality of your ammo if you didn't have a skillful, steady hand. Maybe then you'd realize your secret calling as the marketplace's best ammo smith. And as we continue to add these things which make perfect sense, it would suck you into the world and align you with your avatar so much more. Our spoils of war are a big focus in this kind of genre, so of course, with our newfound freedom, we'd want to physically display and arrange these spoils as we see fit, fully in the world with an intuitive gun wall system. Of course! Your entire safe house is not shy for storage either. There is lots of space to collect and display your spoils with as much or little nuance as you like. It can't be understated how these tiny massive things which VR is enabling us to excel at make such a huge difference and blur the line between you and the in-game you, orders of magnitude beyond flat screen input. But while all these things by themselves are very neat and cool and lovely, if the introduction of all these new interactions were done in isolation with you and you alone in a single-player context, I think it would be missing a big opportunity. Now then, my fellow nerd, I know you think you're a solo renegade lone wolf, badass, level 100 ultra gamer who strikes fear into the hearts of nerds across the globe. But you're not. You are a social creature who needs and wants to connect with others. Deal with it. Thus, it's with other real players in a meaningful setting that these innovations can truly stand out to create moments in virtual worlds we could not experience until now, which Ghosts of Tabor is accomplishing and improving upon right before our very lenses. Sprinkle on top of this a compelling high-stakes world that comes with a natural dynamicism, if that's even a word, and drama that accompanies player-to-player interactions, and we have something so incredibly exciting for VR gaming. An actual, live, working demonstration of the mere beginnings for VR potential. Finally seeing some realization. And so now we all begin to see that these things can be done, they should be done, and there is no more excuses for squandering VR any further with the compromised jank vomited onto the marketplace that we've had to put up with until now. Dear complacent sheep VR developers who don't bother trying to challenge themselves, please take note of what's being done here and kick yourselves up the arse. Not just from this game, but from the many others who have at least tried something. No more excuses. I told you in so many words earlier that my aim is to be an antidote to the vapid corporate speak and hype train culture which pervades so much of our public discourse. But up to now, I've been pretty damn hypey about this game, you could say. All of what I said are my genuine feelings, and I've still some more to impart yet. At this moment, though, I am confidently positive for Tabor's potential and future development. This could very well turn out to be the software needed for virtual reality to get eyes on from others and be taken more seriously. However, despite intuition, foresight, and confidence, I acknowledge that all this also may not happen. Ghosts of Tabor may never deliver its potential for reasons we won't know until they happen. I said I endeavor to share things how I perceive them to be in the here and now. So holding true to this, let's look at what Ghosts of Tabor is in the here and now. And things are, presently, quite messy. So viewer and listener, strap in. We're dealing with early access and all of the ramifications of that. And Ghosts of Tabor is early access with a capital E, in bold font, underlined, surrounded by exclamation marks while on fire. The game is littered with jank and bugs, many of which undermine you as a player in very impactful ways or outright prevent you from playing properly. Alongside this, the basic core fundamentals of gameplay design, before all the impressive innovations they've made, they're very rudimentary and barely function. Is the game playable as of making this video? Yes. Is it in any way stable and will generally not sabotage you in some way from moment to moment? No. Do I think the devs should have released the game in this state as a paid product, even in early access and despite all the great innovations? No, they should not have. But they did, for whatever reason, and that's the reality of it now. Despite all of this, it seems to have done well enough on release, and I've no question the devs have the ability to make an excellent, stable product, eventually. And we can praise be to Odin that Ghosts of Tabor isn't made by an introverted solo dev living in their bubble who will take at least 5 years to put together 1/4 of a traditional product, if that. Assuming they haven't abandoned the project long before, like many do, no. P.S. I know there are a few good solo devs out there, and I'm not including you in what I just said. No. Tabor is made by a proper team of several mature people with a hierarchy and focused vision and ambitious attitudes and ability and skill who want to make something great and cool and hopefully have understood that this nearly always needs a focused team effort. I see this attitude in how the devs communicate and develop, so I feel we're in good shape. Still though, if you're interested in playing soon but have been unsure, here are some of the things you can anticipate which will frequently occur in the current state of the game. Just be aware that before I even get this video public, some of what I say may already be out of date and possibly fixed. Collected items vanishing from your safe house. Hand interactions constantly failing you, breaking or doing something unintended. And I'm talking at least more than 50% of attempts here. Grabbing and interacting are in a world of jank at the moment. Items being flung out of your hands or vanishing inexplicably for reasons unknown. Very poor sound effect sample quality and a complete lack of verticality or occlusion and atmospheric sounds in general. Ammunition in weapons and magazines in raid not appearing correctly, vanishing or downright deceiving you visually. A very bare-bones movement system with an awful acceleration curve. Comical player animations which constantly glitch out. The AI is a bit better, but still very basic. Sparse visuals and poor environment detail rife with pop-in and low-quality assets, particularly on the island of Tabor map exterior. There is an overall lack of artistic character and detail to the world design, which I feel compromises the immersion. The biggest offender of all of these for me, by far, are the constantly failing and unreliable grabbing interactions. For a core action, the player will be doing the vast majority of their time playing, maybe even 95% or more. Having it be so janky and fail as much as it does for what seems to be so many little reasons combining together is one of the biggest things impacting this game's playability. I get that a lot is being done under the surface here. Those very systems of innovative interactivity which I praised earlier are brand new and experimental, so leeway must be given as we work things out. I get that. But still, for it to fail or do the wrong thing as much as it does on a basic level, for a user, its current state for a paid product is pushing the limits of acceptability. This foundational core aspect of playing the game needs serious polish in many areas which I'm going to elaborate on in another video. The second worst thing to interactions for me is the movement. It sucks. It may look passable on the footage you're seeing behind my voice now. On a flat screen, one can get away with this, but I assure you it feels terrible in VR. There is no fine control of your character whatsoever. Your speed jerks too easily from one extreme to another. The only thing you can reliably do is skate forwards or backwards, strangely enough. And so, surprise, surprise, this informs the dominant behavior of play. I do think Tabor would be a great candidate to test my proposal for integrating control emotion to achieve certain modes of movement and add much-needed depth and granularity to the gameplay. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So you might be wondering why I'm bringing critical attention to the lacking in foundational things like the ability to interact, movement, visuals, and sound. Particularly as I've already stated the game is in a very early access state and has a lot to develop on. Well, I'm doing this exactly because they are the foundational things. These things set the stage for greater experiences and inform how the other aspects will develop. And the longer they're left unaddressed while the other mechanics get piled on, the more complex it will become to revamp them later, especially after players have acclimatized to them and may resist large or extreme changes to how they play. If Ghosts of Tabor wants to become a serious player and attempt to compel and immerse the player and audience like its inspiration, Escape from Tarkov, and maybe even go beyond, then I believe it's going to need those foundational design details and flourishes, setting the precedent as early as possible, and then build on top of them. As for all the other issues, there is no need to say much else. I've no doubt the background footage I'm using behind my voice is probably saying plenty already. All these issues combine together to make a gameplay experience that is extremely early access, and I can't blame dismayed buyers who expected something more stable and playable than what they got. If you are to play Tabor in its current state, then I suggest you do so with the mind to not take any of it seriously or expect to be immersed beyond brief moments before some kind of bug or jank rips you away from it. Those of you familiar with my channel will know I am highly intolerant of jank design, particularly if the game has believable immersion as a primary goal. And I'm not shy to condemn something because of this, just like my favorite ongoing punching bag Into the Radius. Oh, and by the way, huge praise to the devs for having the programming skill to enable you to pick up long items without your hand having a seizure. Who would have thought it can be done? Now then, my dear viewer, because you lack standards, or you're too young, or you lack self-respect, or you just don't like me, or all of the above, I probably can come across as unfair and too critical, where I should instead be cutting the devs some slack in this brand new field of development, yet I often don't. So here is where I may say something you wouldn't expect. If you have any kind of interest in Ghosts of Tabor, particularly if your instinct is urging you, then I do strongly recommend you buy and support it. As I said, I talk a lot in my videos about how we need to reward innovation and risk-taking. So now it's time for me to put my money where my mouth is and be consistent with the principles I espouse to all of you and take a risk myself. The background conditions for this product and their team give me a good feeling, despite how unstable the game is now. For one, the team clearly recognized the potential of VR input, and they've already successfully developed and combined a multitude of new systems into something playable. Secondly, it's an actual team with teamwork and roles and collaboration and a guiding philosophy. This alone is leagues above the norm for typical VR development. Thirdly, the dev team don't appear to be corporate monkeys in their public-facing communication. There seems to be direct acknowledgement and some humility of their shortcomings, and show what appears to be a genuine desire to rectify them. Fourthly, and you'll have to take my word for this, having been a part of the closed alpha for a while, the dev team, Combat Waffle Studios, have made very impressive, rapid progress making this game over the last year, and show care for details others simply wouldn't bother to. Fifthly, all the previous combined with the fact they're daring to try, to innovate, to stick their middle finger up at the lazy status quo for VR and take a risk. For these reasons and many more that I can't think of at the moment, it all combines to give my intuition a good feeling about this one. So that's why I can readily tolerate the jank of Tabor and still heartily recommend it to you, if you're into this kind of thing. More so as a show of support and investment at this stage. Unlike most other could-be's in VR software over the years which didn't make it for whatever reason, which we've seen come and go, this one really has the conditions behind it to go the distance. Or maybe it won't. There is no guarantee for anything, and none of us truly know what can happen in the next moment. But these unknowns are the main fun of life, aren't they? It's becoming more obvious to me that in our sterilized, risk-averse modern corporate cultures, VR needs our help to find its foothold to get to where we hope it can be. With wisdom enough to sense the conditions and a willingness to take a risk, we consumers need to be active in supporting the kind of innovation we see attempted here. Much the same as those of you who would see the potential in me and choose to risk supporting. You do so wanting it to bear meaningful, impactful fruit from our collaboration together. Each of our minute contributions coalescing into something much more that can have dramatic effects on the big picture. So, is Tabor the VR game we've been waiting for to get the medium the attention it deserves? In its current state, no, it's not. But with the right attention, could it be? Absolutely, yes. Many pieces have already aligned to make this an attainable prospect. Combat Waffle Studios have done the brave initial charge headfirst into the unknown front lines of true VR development, where most others don't even dare. Do we each sit and watch as they charge alone and hope they'll make it through? Or do we take a little risk ourselves, trust in their chosen path, and provide them with some backup? An enormous thank you to all of the Patreons who have made the decision to support me. I ask for only £1 per creation. If you wish to support, links will be where they usually are.